to see if she could get in. And this is probably the interesting vote here. So towards the end, 600 votes disappeared off the candidate, which was pointed out. This is where it came from. So you had a Uriel Dutch Gunner backlist Dr. Spot iBeast candidate. So as Uriel got knocked out, Dutch Gunner was already gone, backlist was gone as well, Dr. Spot was gone. And this is where it said, oh, 600 votes went back to iBeast, who was already elected, so they disappeared. And because he didn't have a sixth candidate, that's where that 600 went. If they had have had, say, Arcia there, Arcia could have made it and Mike would have missed out. Anyone got any more questions?
Yeah, that was. I saw some weirdness here. So, by the way, we're streaming a bit late here, going over this year's results with Ren, talking in stations. We were doing predictions last week, and now we're looking at results. And real quick, Ren, how close did you get on the predictions?
I got 9 of 10 right. The one I missed out on was iBeast. I thought Phantomite was going to make it, but I did have iBeast as likely as a potential difference there.
Yeah, something of a weaker. Go ahead.
Where I did fall down was I did not predict how well Goons or Imperium turned up, and they turned up really well. And Brisk actually got in very easily, where I thought it would be fairly close for him to get in.
Right, and that is really one of the stories of the day, was the actual increase in strength of the Imperium vote. Is it?
Yeah, so if you compare the votes from last year to this year, most of the Pappy alliances are relatively even and similar, where Imperium had a big jump in votes. When you look at this, you can go, oh, Goblin's got only 1,700, Horde only voted 1,700 times, and Imperium voted 6,500. That's sort of not all that accurate. What has happened is Horde doesn't follow the 10 candidates as well as Imperium does. So all the Imperium guys will follow those 10 candidates down the line. You get over 80% of the voters actually follow them all the way to 10, where Horde is a little bit more do as you want. So they'll follow 6 of these candidates or 7 of these candidates. So that same voting pattern will appear again and again further down with just a slight variation. And the way this spreadsheet calculates it out, it doesn't spot those variations. It just says it's a different vote.
So one way of looking at it overall is that the Imperium has more disciplined voters as far as the ballot is concerned. Or is it that there's just more diversity in Pappy since it's multiple coalitions?
I think the Imperium one, that's the way that they say it. You can choose to use your freedom, and by following exactly what we say is probably a very good piece of propaganda to say, do what we say.
Or instructions. But yeah,
Or
it's
instructions,
it's
but it's a
comedic.
very clever way to do it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Whereas Horde is probably, and the other Pappy alliances, like none of them actually. For example, Frat I think followed their candidates very well, surprisingly. Where Horde is a little bit more all over the place. Test is a little bit more all over the place as well. PLNC followed it relatively reasonable, but Imperium is a significant step up in terms of following what they get told to do.
Well, one thing that surprised me about Fraternity was if you looked at their vote, it should have gone to Kenneth first and then to the Chinese player, Richmond. And it seemed like there was a segment that put Rich first before Kenneth, which I thought was interesting.
There was a few things that was going on there. A bunch of people voted for Rich straight up, so he would have got those votes to begin with instead of Kenneth. Rich got 250 votes in the first round, where Kenneth got, let me just check to make sure we get this right. Kenneth got almost 3,000, but that is split with NCMPL as well. So a lot of it followed the go with Kenneth first. Like here you can see Kenneth Rich. So this is the main Frat voting block here, where it goes Kenneth to Rich. But you'll also see down here, there's a Goblins to Rich to Progod to Kenneth one here, which is a bit of an interesting one. I'm not sure how this one came about or where it came from because none of the
Hmm.
Winterco ballots that I saw had Goblins as first.
Well, I wonder if it was a segment of Winter Coalition that's a variation on Fraternity, but yeah, I don't know.
Well, I've actually got Industry Tunes in Winterco, and I've got all their pings, and that ballot specifically didn't come out for any ping that I saw.
Hmm.
So it's quite interesting that it appeared, and 270 people actually followed it.
Again, that could be one person with 200, 300 accounts. That's what's tricky about this.
Yeah, because it's a little bit weird because they took out Angry Mustache, I think, and yeah, it didn't quite follow it, and Sado got moved around, so it looks like it was a corp or someone who said go vote this way.
Well, that's interesting that Angry Mustache, who is Imperium, and Maldavius, who is, well, Maldavius actually was working with Fraternity, so that doesn't make too big a shock. But Angry Mustache being in there is kind of interesting.
Well, Angry Mustache was in the Winterco How to Vote, where this 270 doesn't have him in it at all. So
Hmm.
potentially it is a hardcore frat guys decided to vote their own way, and they didn't want to vote for Kenneth. But unless we actually see who voted who, we will never know.
Okay, but again, so Fraternity voted a little bit interestingly. Some people voted for. Was there a big fall off from people who voted for Rich Richmond first? The votes that went to Kenneth, those are the ones that tell me that they switched the order.
There wasn't any significant number of votes that went straight to Rich.
Okay, curious about that because we were thinking like is there like a national component to it or a racial component to it that might be interesting, and I guess not significantly. No.
Yeah, just looking down this, I'm down to like 20 votes, and I'm still not finding Rich as the first candidate. So it looks like
Yeah.
Rich actually did get a lot of support from the small game community, where it had a few voters instead of having a null block voting straight for him.
Well,
Rich
that's
Richmond, your
mm,
thoughts?
how much how many votes how much of Kenneth's votes were from Winterco?
1,000 straight up. Plus, there's the other one, which was yeah. So a third of Kenneth's first round preferences came straight from Winterco main ballot, and he would have got some more where people were slightly varied from the main ballot. So over a third.
Hmm. And
Well,
how much of Kenneth's votes came from NCPL?
Well, the biggest PL one was 550 or 520 from PL and 440 from NC. So Winterco as a block was about the same as NCPL, roughly.
Hmm.
See, this stuff's all very hard to work out because although we can see who got the top line number of votes, there was almost 40,000 votes. And this year we had 10,000 various different voting
oh wow.
orders, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so these are people who voted their own way, or at least with this account.
Yeah, so you've got 47 candidates and you've got 10 slots, so it's almost like a lottery in terms of how many numbers of possible order possibilities you can have. So once you get over more than 4 or 5, it's a bunch of people being told to vote the same way,
Well, look
or
at
one person voting multiple times.
multiple times, right? But look at this. Look at this strong high sec vote here that potentially is 10,000. That might be overstating it, but you have a Jurius, non null sec. You have Dutch
Yeah, so
Gunner.
if
You
you're
have Mike
looking
Azaria.
if you look in
Azariah.
the first column, number of votes. So this is one person went for Juris, Dutch, Progod, Goblin, Sticks, Win Z, Rix, Angry, Mustache, Mike, and Rich Richmond. So this is one person voted that way.
Or one
But there
account.
was
Some people take their 3 accounts and they mix them up into 3 different ways. But yeah.
yeah. So the other one that's interesting is a lot of people say, "Oh, Sicko, who's a high sec alliance, don't vote very well." But a lot of because Sicko is the biggest alliance in the game, but a lot of people have secondary characters in Sicko because they need to do, like, you're more likely to have a secondary character in Sicko to do high sec stuff than you are to have a secondary character to do null sec stuff because you want a high sec trader or whatever. And what happens, and I think has happened, is you get to vote one per account, not one per character. So if you got a character that's in high sec and in Sicko, but you've got a main in, say, fraternity, you're going to vote more likely with fraternity than you are going to vote with Sicko.
Mhm.
You get to choose per character or per account, not per character. So when you start matching number of characters in alliances compared to how many votes they get, I think Sicko gets an unfair look in to say, oh, they got all these people, but they don't vote. A lot of them, I think, you'll find are alts.
Ren, do you want to share this spreadsheet, or do you want to keep it to yourself?
This is Suetonius' spreadsheet.
Can I get a listing to it, or yeah, I'll put it in chat.
Just out of curiosity, why would you need your high sec alt in Sicko?
It's just a alliance that can't be war decked, so it's just convenient.
But no other particular benefit or something.
They're very good at spamming. Please join us.
They have structures, and it makes good for a good cover story later if you want to use it as a spy.
Fair.
Well,
What? Okay, so the big takeaways here are a bit of improvement over last year. A lot less than I thought. The improvement was only 2,000, or just under 2,000 new votes.
And a lot of those were goons. Oh, sorry, Goon Swarm and Imperium.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would mind, but Imperium's more correct. But I think we all know.
I've been yelled at, so I've got to make sure I get it right.
Oh,
this
okay.
time.
Well, be accurate then. What do you think of what was interesting to me about this election? Goonswarm's going to do what they've done in the last 3 or 4 elections, which is turn out the vote, give a proper 1 to 10 list, and they did that. But what was new this year was the amount of strategic voting that was happening on the Pappy side because they had so many different coalitions. Individually.
I think there was a lot of talk, which was organisation, which amounted to nothing. Because if you actually look at who got in compared to last year, the only change from the Pappy side was instead of Maria getting in, ProGod got in.
Yeah. Right. So they were basically just as effective as they were last year. And the 2 wild cards, or 3 wild cards, well, let's say Mike isn't a wild card because he got in last year pretty much on his own merits, got in this year on his own merits. I think that's fair to say. But it's interesting. This looks a lot like, because this looks like a lot like last year because the last 2 spots were streamers and PvP mid-gang guys.
Yeah. So what was I going to say? I just lost my train of thought. Sorry.
And let me finish this thought. Last year, you had a Phantomite and you had a Torvald that got in, which is basically mid-range or mid-size PvP and streamer PvP.
So when I did my original spreadsheet, I actually posted it to a few people and I asked, "Oh, what do you think? What do you think?" All that sort of stuff, and I got some feedback. And I changed how I did it, and I posted it a few more times. I got some feedback, and we changed it. And then we brought it onto Talking in Stations, and we posted it, and I actually got quite a few feedback. And the one person a lot of people turned around and said, "Oh, you're underestimating is Suetonia." So I've actually had 7 or 8 people personally messaging me saying, "Suetonia is underestimated. Suetonia is underestimated."
Yeah.
And to me, when you start getting like 7 people going Suetonia is underestimated and maybe 1 or 2 going somewhere else, you start going, okay, maybe Suetonia has a reasonable chance. And that definitely followed through. So I liked how we did it and we came up with these predictions where it wasn't just me going, oh, this is what's going to happen. There was a lot of a group effort. So I didn't have Mike Azarata for getting it first at all this year. But Abby turned around and said, no, Mike's going to get in for this, this, and this reason. And Abby was completely correct.
Go Abby.
So I like this conversation. I think Talking in Stations especially, we had this conversation multiple times. And although my name is on this, it was a group effort. And because people were positive and wanted to help and improve the conversation, we actually got to a very good spot where we picked almost all the candidates correctly.
What blows my mind is the continuous inability of wormholes to get their own guy in. Just every year, the same thing.
How does that blow your mind for one moment? How does that blow your mind?
Because you think
Consider the wormhole space is at maximum about 3,000 people.
Real quick,
And how many
Teddy.
votes?
Real quick, Teddy. Teddy
it
is
doesn't matter.
just 1 second. Teddy is a wormhole player himself and ran for CSM and did very well on this election. So, go ahead, Teddy. Sorry.
It doesn't really matter. Like, you have entire NorSec alliances getting 3 people in, and we can't get one in as an entire community because we're so small. And then everyone's like, nah, why doesn't Wormhole Space get anyone in? Like, because we're small, we're an underrepresented place.
I would highly disagree with that statement. So last year, for example, I haven't done the numbers this year, but last year, Nullsec had 50% of the votes and they got 70% of the candidates in. And the main reason for that is A, they voted all the way to 10, and B, they talked to each other and sorted each other out. If you look at the votes from last year, for example, just as Test was removing the non-invasion pack with Imperium, Imperium still had Villi and Goblins on their list. So Imperium's still doing a deal with the enemy, going, we have to do a deal with the enemy to get who we want in.
Is that not weird to you guys that, like, people that are literally fighting each other are going to sit there and agree, like, yes, let's backroom agree everything? That's just cringe.
Can I chime in here?
Yeah.
I don't think they're cooperating in order to, let's make NullSec better or something. I think it's just out of pure
self-interest. It's out of the
each
theoretical
side
need that they need to pack the CSM with no candidates.
I don't think so. I think each side want their candidate to be elected, and so the best way to ensure that is it's just like game theory. It's a classic. Just no.
It's just politic. It's just NullSec is playing the numbers to decide to be like, yes, let's get everyone that we can in, instead of just trying to represent our playstyle.
So, in other words, Nullsec is seeing the bigger picture and seeing that getting more people on is more important than arguing with each other. And wormholes are spending too much time arguing.
If you also look at the numbers from last year, if you're talking about last year, the CSM election just happened after one of the biggest wormhole wars in history, when everyone was so divided that no one was going to vote for the other side's candidates. Like, I don't know about you guys, but that's one of the major draws of Wormhole Space, is that we don't all just sit here like holding hands after we've just had a slap.
Quick question here. Isn't Nullsec currently in like the biggest war ever?
When literally nothing has happened. Everyone's just sat outside of 1DQ.
I will repeat that Test basically declared war just before the CSM candidate last year, and Imperium still put Test down. You've had the whole issue with the perimeter trading tower has still existed throughout this entire war. And if you look at Reddit, for example, this war is as bitter as any war going around. Despite all these issues, Nullsec have realised that they still need to work together to improve the game, to improve what they want to play.
What does that tell you about the war? What does that tell you about the war? That it literally is just, we want to fight, we want something to do, and we want to fight.
All right.
Wormhole is a very short-sighted.
Well, no, I don't know if that's the conclusion you can grab. Let me butt in here for a second, Teddy, if you don't mind. I just want to point out there's some interesting stuff that happened with this wormhole vote. We saw a lot of votes that went from a wormhole candidate to Rick's Javix. I don't know if you noticed that. And then
those were my votes because he was second on my ballot.
Okay, so
because I was second on his.
Okay, so that's what I was trying to figure out. And then those votes,
like we do talk to other people. Like, we don't just sit in wormhole space.
So you did.
Not many people want to like fly the wormhole a flag.
Right. So he was second on your list. You were second on his. Your votes went to him, and then they went back to Mark, who's a different wormhole candidate after Rick's. And then after Mark fell out, they went to Mike Azariah. I think
all the Mike votes are all the brave candidate votes. Because we had a lot of votes from Spoopy Newbies.
I see.
Which is the brave wormhole core.
So did you do some retail campaigning or politique with making deals with different groups that weren't Nullsec related?
Well, I mean, we have to because we don't have enough people to get on. Because
No,
a lot
you
of people
have
in
enough
wormhole space don't vote because they're so
haven't-
disillusioned with CCP that they just
I
don't vote.
I
Ren's what
highly
you're
disagree. Wormholes have enough votes to get on easily. They just put it this way: wormholes can't agree to who should be best representing them, so no one represents them. They need to start agreeing to who's their best representation. Suetonia effectively got on this year because of a lot of wormhole votes.
Well, yeah, because he's a good streamer, he's a good PvPer, and he has an independent brain.
Yeah, so instead
That's
of
why
those
people
votes
want to vote
going,
for him. Like, no wormhole is going to go and vote for like Brisk or something.
but all those votes, instead of going to a wormhole candidate, they went to Suetonia instead, who is
Yeah, because a lot of
effectively
people,
Volta.
because there's been splits in the wormhole community where people
Well,
will just
that's the
won't vote
wormhole
for us.
community. That's
Like,
the wormhole community's problem. They've got to fix it up. They've got to sort out their differences and stop
I mean,
talking about what
all
makes
this
them
sounds
separate.
like is just like the bigger guys in the playground being like, oh, why don't you guys just like do this? When like spoiler alert, it's kind of not possible. You can't get these
all right.
like, tiny
Just-
these tiny
the thing
tribes
is-
to agree
The
to
thing
it.
is, though, is what you're saying isn't possible is what nullsec has been doing for years.
Yeah, but it's not though. Let's be
It
real.
is. It's exactly what
It
nullsec's
is.
been doing.
Nullsec, apart from this year's been the first one where it hasn't.
Really,
happened.
nullsec sits there and just jacks each other off for the last
Oh,
5 years.
you're live on air, by the way. I hope you know. I should have said that earlier.
Can I find the
Go
middle
to
ground
Mecca.
here? I think some of what he says is, I mean, so a lot of the null blocks really play in a play style that's socially emphasized. So people care about this kind of stuff, and they care about the sense of belonging. So I'm a goon, I'm a test, I'm a legacy, whatever. So let's elect our guy, and let's elect this guy and that guy. And then at the leadership level, sure, they cooperate, and I think it's out of self-interest. It's not out of, let's ensure 6 null people go into CSM. It's just out of, we both want our candidates in, so why shouldn't we add our people in the ballot? So in that sense, I think nullsec has a great advantage, and that's that's never going to be overcame. But I would put wormholers, like, if I had to guess, and I didn't have any information about it when I was CSM, but if I had to guess, I would put like 10 to 8% of all EVE by real players into wormholer category. I think that's
Which is enough to get elected.
Yeah, but
I think that's enough to get elected.
How
But
many-
if you can,
how many of
if you can
those-
unite,
how
if
many
you can
of those
unite
people-
behind.
how many of those people are real people or just solo players in
No,
a wormhole?
Hold on, Mecca.
Well-
Teddy, and then Villy. Go ahead.
So you might count that entire number, but it's such a splintered and fractured group. There's not even a good way to find everyone because of the way wormholes work. You can't even just like take gates and go, oh, vote for Teddy. Like, there are some groups where you might not even find them for a year. Like, a lot of these groups are very insular, do not interact with the community at all.
I'm going to jump in front of Villy. Congratulations, Villy. Congratulations, Suetonia. You're both CSM16 now. They're both in this channel. Before we go to them, can I ask Teddy a question about, is there a difference in what wormholers can agree upon mechanically that would want them to say, no, I don't want the opposite wormholer to get on because I don't believe in what his changes are or what he would want?
If you look at the Praise Bob ballot and some of the ballots from the other wormholers, all of the other wormholers are on that ballot. And then if you look at the sort of standing points that all of us have ran on, they're all the same. It's just whoever you prefer. Like, we all told each other to go, like, everyone that wanted to vote for us, to go and vote for everyone else. And you can see that in the vote, that like a ton of my votes went to Mark. Because realistically, it was the only way that we can get enough like appeal to then concentrate it into one person.
But you didn't concentrate it to one person because Suetonia got a whole heap of them because Suetonia was on the Praise Bob thing.
Okay.
And Suetonia got on.
Ren,
Because
you
he's famous, right? So you need a miracle to like unite all the wormholes.
But
It's important to understand there's a difference between
famous.
Hold on,
it's important to understand
let Villy get in
there is
here.
a difference between putting somebody else on your ballot and having that somebody else on your ballot in the proper position on that ballot. There is a massive difference between having somebody on your ballot on 6th position and having your ballot on the 2nd position. In one of those positions, there might be no value. In one of those positions, there might be 100% of the value.
You know, that's curious. Ren, did you sort out that whole 6 vote is worthless? What was the result of that when you had the discussion with Billy?
Anything past the 6th vote on the Pappy ballot was worthless.
What about
We were both right.
Okay, you were both right, but what about regular? Okay, so picture this for a moment. If you say it's a miracle, but how difficult of a miracle would it be to have, say, a wormhole group, the wormhole community and the small gang community just say, look, these are the 10 people who are independent and align with us. Put them in any kind of way you like, but put them on your ballot.
They effectively did, and that's what got Satonia with a lot of votes to get in. Because effectively what they said is put Mark, Teddy, Satonia, and 2 other guys, I can't remember who, in whatever order you want. As the other guys dropped out, Satonia got the votes. So effectively, it wasn't the only reason Satonia got in, but the wormhole vote went to Satonia because of that. If they had turned around and said, we want Mark first, we want Teddy second, and put it in the actual order like all the nullsec ones do, then potentially Mark or Teddy would have got in.
But the problem is, if, say, you have all these different wormhole groups and there was a Hard Knocks one, I'm guessing they'd remove the Hard Knocks one because they wouldn't vote for him, and then this is what causes the issue. But you reference the Australian Prime Minister who got in with, like, just a really small number of votes because he and another guy just put each other on their supporting ballots. So the wormhole community should easily be able to pull out one candidate in a middle ground if they had a middle ground.
They effectively did, and the candidate was Satonia.
Well, he's technically not a wormhole
candidate,
but he
we put Suetonia on there because he is a decent PvPer. You can just explain mechanics to him if you need to. And he has an independent brain. Like he's not some like null follower.
On your ballot, where was Suetonia positioned?
I was 6th on the Foxhole ballot, right? I think it was Rick.
I think so.
It was
it
was Teddy first, Rick second, then it was Mark second, maybe Rick's third. I can't remember.
He was 6th on the Foxhole ballot.
I mean, it's also important to remember. Perhaps the desired thing here is just like one less null person and one more wormholer. But what would have happened instead was like Mike not getting elected. So we would be discussing, why there is no ISAC candidate. So overall, it's just the numbers are not strong enough for independent candidates to, steal one from the nullsec side.
Because
the votes are there.
The selection is for 4 seats.
The votes are there. Only 50% of the votes last year were for nullsec candidates. They got 70% of the candidates because they follow the candidate block and they vote in blocks.
It'd be interesting to see what would have happened if iBeast had a second candidate on his one, right? Because there's 772 votes for iBeast with no other candidate there.
It's not just that. It's the one below as well. That's 675. So if the 772 and the 675, that's almost 1,500 votes that had no secondary backup. So once iBeast got in, anything extra disappeared.
Who is iBeast? I had not heard of this person.
Lucy Liu.
Streamer.
Yeah, Russian solo small gang streamer.
Russian
very
streamer, Alliance Tournament player, winner. Actually, Alliance Tournament winner.
I'm just surprised because he seemed fairly low profile compared to.
No, it's just English bias.
He's very popular among the Russian player base.
He's very high profile.
Actually, kind of give credit because one thing he doesn't do is he doesn't stream in English, right? He stays in Russian and he works his community, not anybody else's.
Yeah, But let's look at that. iBeast, who's Lucy Liu in the game. We were looking at that, or actually, it was CCP was looking at it, saying a lot of support actually came from the English community.
Yeah, I mean, he's also he's also like a really respected solo PvPer, small gang PvPer. Like the same kind of people who would vote for me would also probably have iBeast on their ballot.
No, I did.
Yeah. Suetonia, Vili, I think that's who we have in here. Surprised? Feelings? What are you guys going through now?
I was kind of surprised, I guess. I mean, I thought I had a pretty good shot. I didn't think I would I wasn't 100% sure I would get in. It was kind of spoiled for me though, with 10 people messaging me congratulations at 3 o'clock. So I was like, what are they talking about? Oh, it's his big thing.
that was no, it wasn't a purposeful leak, but players were able to get the results 2 hours before the presentation that we just saw.
Getting told by CCP Swift that it was dummy data was really fun.
Yeah, I think CCP Dopamine also said something as he started the stream about, if you've seen the result on Reddit, it might be slightly different. So I was like, but it was exact. As soon as the first slide came up, we actually compared all of the votes and totals to the data that we got, and it was like 100% match, and then we just knew it was over from that point. Like we knew what was the result was going to be.
It's too bad because it was dramatic at the end if you didn't know how it was already going to end. Billy,
I think it's really unfortunate, actually.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate.
Because Arcia, for example, was like hyper close, and know, it's always sad to see people get that close but not make it.
That's a heartbreak for TIS. You weren't sure you were going to get on.
Yeah, so we played it pretty tight, I guess, or we figured between Papu we had 4.5 votes worth of people, but we had to spread them out in an exact kind of way, and we put a lot of work into kind of planning it out or whatever, but it was still going to be tight, and obviously it was tight. So there was a very real chance that either myself or ProGod would not make it, and obviously as soon as one of us is eliminated, the other gets all those votes, and then they make it. But it was just a possibility that we were definitely aware of, and I put that chance at like 20 or 30%. Looks like our voting was pretty solid, which is good. So everything went as planned, but it was definitely a risk.
It just sounds to me like a huge risk for you and ProGod to chance it like that.
Yeah, but you gotta appreciate that getting out of the CSM might not be, not making it is sometimes as much a reward in some ways.
Right. I'm just thinking of the political climate with the war and everything, and you guys being pretty much the target of a lot of the propaganda coming from the Imperium, and they're the target of your propaganda as well, that it would be a risk to see all of them get on and you both don't get on. That just seems like a political
Well, there was no way we both weren't going to get on.
Gamble.
As I say, if I was eliminated, the ProGod would pick up all my votes. If ProGod was eliminated, I'd pick up all his votes, right? So either way, it was almost a certainty that one of us was going to make it. The reality was there was a very real chance that one of us wasn't going to make it. So
it's also, I think, it's in the end, it's helpful to divide votes so that the candidates do the middle section of the voting phase better, compared to a case where it's like more like Imperium, where Willy is the first and the ProGod is the second. In that case, maybe ProGod might not have survived some of the earlier rounds. So I think that's advantageous for them to split the votes that way, even though they both remain the same the last round.
Yeah, well, I mean, we had a pretty good idea how many first round votes we would need to ensure somebody makes it to the final round. And it was just about splitting up where we thought we were going to get the votes, analyzing last year's data from third-party entities, because third-party entities generally don't vote anywhere near as strong for you as they do for their native groups, and just trying to figure out how many third-party first votes are we going to get here, how many are going to get there, trying to make it all work.
No, Fraternity threw a big old wrench in the plans by putting Rich Richmond way up at near the top of their list. Ren,
not ideal.
Did you? Yeah, that must
not ideal.
Ren, how did that play out? What would have happened if Rich was in first place as opposed to second on the Fraternity ballot or the Winter Coalition?
If he was first on the ballot, I'd need to do a lot more numbers to work it out 100% what would happen, but I suspect ProGod would have...
Spot, speak up, please. Tell him. Say it.
I've got the actual code for the ballot running, and I'm taking people out, moving people around to see what happened. And if Rich was number one, he makes it to 11th, but he does not win, and the end result is the same. But if Kenneth doesn't run at all, you get quite a wacky CSM. If Kenneth is completely removed, you get Maldavius, Run USMC, Rich Richmond, Jurius Doctor, Uriel, Phantomite, Arcia, Micromancer, Suetonia, and Brisk.
What?
That doesn't make any sense.
That doesn't sound right. Like
that sounds super weird.
Denominator and Merkel are basically guaranteed they're never going to leave.
Yeah,
the
there's
CSM.
something wrong
Did you
with
say
that. I don't know why it
Micromancer?
Hold
on. Do your maths again. This is terrible.
Let me triple check it. Let me
There's
read
no
the
way
lead comment.
Micromancer gets
Yeah.
in. He was like 7th on the Imperium ticket.
Bloody hell,
Let me
Spud.
do it again. Hold on.
It's like you
Yeah.
completely
flashing a
blocked
bit.
like every ballot after like the Kenneth name or something. Like don't know what's happened
It's
there.
like you removed every vote from Kenneth.
I think that sounds like a wish
I did.
list for.
Hold on.
That's a wish
That's
list for
destroying it.
disaster. No,
That's the
That's
wish
a-
list that you impose on CCP
Okay, I did it right this time.
I did it right this
time. If you got rid of Kenneth entirely, as if he never run, never a single vote, you get Arcia instead, and that's the only change. And
That sounds right.
Rich makes it to 11th again.
Oh, great! They're both in TIS. Yeah. Hey, you guys did great. Rich did great. Teddy did really well. Spod, you did really well. You got into the high 700s. Very respectable.
On my case, if both Uriel and Mike Azariah didn't run, I won.
Where was Arcia on the
Liz
list?
The magic spot. You need to show us.
RC was 11th at the end. She just missed. But it was her and Mike Azariah competing for the last spot. Behind.
I think Arcia needed like 200 more votes, and it would have been Arcia instead of Mike.
Mm-hmm. And we've seen cases of lots of votes falling off.
You say 200? I thought it was like 30.
No, it was like 200.
No, it was 200.
Is it 200?
Yeah, and there was a lot of votes that basically fell away.
250.
Yeah, it was. Not that they all would have gone to Arcia, but it was relatively close, and there was a lot of wasted votes because people didn't really put people on at the end.
My condolences to both Spot and Rich. I've voted for you both.
Thank you. Well,
thanks, bro. We'll see you next year.
Spod, did you learn anything from this CSM attempt?
I learned that I'll go out there and say that I'm going to completely dunk it next year.
All right. What have I learned this year? Improvements need
He's
to be
interviewing
made.
himself. Go ahead, Rich.
Improvements need to be made, and no blocks are very organized, and to simply oppose everything they do is not a good idea for a promising candidate. But somebody who can find the middle ground would do far better.
So
Are you kidding, man? No, Mika got on and he was the anti-null guy, right?
So I think the big takeaway is you need a lot of first-person votes. Despite what we're talking about needing to fill out all your votes and all that sort of stuff, you need a lot of first-person votes or first choices to get in, because 9 of the people who got in were in the top 10 of first votes, and the only one who wasn't in the top 10 was Innominate, who was second on the Imperium candidate.
So that was by design.
I think it's important to be clear, right? Like, if you can't put together, in my opinion, like 800 first ticket votes, you're almost never going to make it to the final 15 or so, where all the real significant vote transfers start happening, right? Like that seems to that's kind of been my evaluation of the math of where you kind of have to be. Like, if you can't get 800, you're really going to struggle to make it to the rounds where all the vote transfers start kicking in and you can really appreciate the STV and have a chance to make it. I know for the Pappy ticket, when we were kind of evaluating candidates for who down ballot was worth it, who could kind of make it that deep and receive those votes. The thought was, looking at Phantomite last year, he would probably be on the bubble, and this year he didn't have near as many first ballot or first position votes as he did last year, which is unfortunate and meant he was lost before any passage could come to him, and then it was Arcia who we figured would have at least somewhat close from the Poshman vote. Unfortunately, the Poshman vote got a little split between her and Maldavius, but and then the RP vote apparently didn't follow properly. I don't know.
What did you think of Phantomite's performance? That there seemed to be some energy that went to Suetonia, maybe iBeast as well, but to other people. But he didn't do that well.
Those low seckers are weird people.
Can I answer that one?
Sure.
I've been running the maths on that one. So if Suetonia didn't run or was eliminated early, then Phantomite won quite comfortably.
Oh, so
Simply they shared the vote between themselves, and it was a collaboration of either one or the other was going to get in, and the luck of the draw was that it was Suetonia instead of Phantomite.
The other point with that is Suetonia was 9th candidate on the Imperium ticket this year, where last year it was Phantomite. So there was a lot of follow through there that got Suetonia over the line.
Was there?
Yes. Like, Suetonia would have made it anyway, but he got a lot of votes coming through the Imperium ticket.
Did that
Do you want to have the same discussion again later?
Did that
That's a
put
good
him?
question. So how many votes did
Retro, go
Suetonia
ahead.
get after? Sorry.
Say it again, Retro, louder.
I was going to say, so then how many votes did Suetonia get off the Imperium ballot then?
So on the last round, when you got Brisk Raval got elected, over 1,000 votes went to Suetonia.
So where was Brisk on the Imperium vote then? Because that would say that Brisk was down at 8th.
Brisk was 3rd. Candidate 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 were already eliminated. So then that went to candidate 9.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's from the what's it, the initiative ballot too, right? Because I'm 4th on that one, and Ibis is 3rd, so there's quite a bit
so
of.
on the initiative one, you got Brisk, who was elected, and Nominate, who was elected, Ibis, who was elected. So then Suetonia, as the 4th candidate, would have picked those up. But only 600 people voted that way, and over 1,000 votes went from Brisk to Suetonia. So the 9th candidate does matter depending on your ballot.
But those
so
aren't
Villy
necessarily Imperium ticket ballots.
Yes, but would you? I'd propose that if Suetonia wasn't 9th on the Imperium ballot and Phantomite was, the people who didn't vote specifically the Imperium ticket would have put Phantomite down instead of Suetonia. Like it happened last year, the same thing, that on the last round, Phantomite got a big chunk of votes from the 9th candidate because it followed through, and this year he didn't do it because he was eliminated already. But it followed exactly what happened to last year.
So how many did Ibis get on the Imperium ballot then?
He didn't actually get any because he was candidate 10 and he'd already been elected by that point. So they didn't go past.
He was on the initiative ballot though, right? And they had Brisk and nominate. So there was a bit of transfer there, I think, before he got elected.
If you give me a second, I'll zoom up and see if I can find it.
The main thing for Ibis, though, I think, is the 7th ballot on that spreadsheet, the Uriel Paradisi one, where he's last place, because once all of those guys get eliminated, he basically gets all of that ballot.
That was an interesting ballot.
Yeah, that's probably the one that got him over the line very easily.
But his getting in also made room for Suetonia to get in, I imagine.
Even without that 700 vote block ballot, actually, Ibis still wins.
But that made room for Suetonia, I figure, if Ibis goes in, right?
Well, once Ibis is elected, yeah, then I start getting some like transfer from the leftover votes from the Imperium and initiative ballots. Surprised it's like 1,000 though. That's shocking to me.
There's no way.
Considering how active the Imperium has been, like the way I'm looking at this CSM is you've got a lot of people who have came back to the game who have still got their accounts, active, rolling over 3, 6, 12-month subscriptions. So they've looked at the CSM and gone, these are the people that I recognize. These people are going to add to my ballot.
So when you look at it, actually, so Brisk Rubal had 4,800 votes total at the end, of which excess was 1,470. He received 1,490 from Innominate. So there was only 20 actual votes that got transferred off the Imperium ticket to Suetonia.
No,
Yes.
That's not how it works. That is not how it works. So 1,500 basically went to Brisk, but Brisk was already over the limit, or just under the limit.
Correct.
So he then goes over, and of those 1,500, 1,000 of them continue down because 500 were used to get Brisk in.
No, 1,470 were transferred down off of Brisk.
So Brisk got 1,470 from Innominate, and then 1,000 of those votes.
got 1,499 from Innominate.
Yep, and then of that, 1,000 continued on to Suetonia because Brisk got elected.
Right, but those are not necessarily Imperium ballots, is my point. And actually, if we're doing the math, only 2/3 of those would be from Imperium ballots.
So 600 votes. So 600 votes went through Imperium.
Yeah, that would be the easiest. Rough. No, it wouldn't. Yes.
Yeah, so 600
No,
votes. So 600 votes filtered through to the 9th candidate.
Well, this has all been interesting. The major takeaway is from this is that the Imperium increased their vote. Maybe they have more accounts turned on, or who knows what. Did we have a number about how much? 1,000?
2,000.
But that's the increase in overall. So you were saying Pappy voted.
Yep.
Pappy groups voted about the same as last year. Imperium increased by 2,000 votes. And I guess everybody else was more or less the same as last year.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
Would it be different if we were in a different phase of the war, where Pappy was the more riled up side?
What do you mean?
We'll never know.
I mean, now,
even people who aren't logging in can probably log in to fill out a CSM ballot, right? Like, even the people who are playing World of Warcraft right now probably voted for the CSM, I imagine.
I don't know, but what I meant is, like, we're in a stage of the war where things got slower because there's draw in the fight over 1DQ constellation. So when we look at the numbers, it looks like Imperium activity has gone up because they're the defenders and they're like last man stand, or they are doing the last stand kind of thing, whereas Pappy was kind of like is getting lower and lower in participation. So this is the phase of the war right now. I was wondering if that has any effects on whether Imperium had more votes.
Well,
if that's clear, I don't know.
Also, there's a tradition, I think, just from my own experience, that PL and NC aren't necessarily great voters. It could be the type of player, it could be the type of accounts that are on at any time. Maybe there's a cultural difference about players that actually socialize and stay online to hang out with each other, as opposed to ones that show up for events or fights.
Well, if you actually scroll down the spreadsheet a bunch, like, what you'll find is there are a lot of PL voters and NC voters who still kind of vote for the same ballot, but they mix up the order a little bit, or they put on, like, someone else onto the end or something like that. You'll see a lot of things that look almost exactly like the PL ballot, but there's just a few names switched around. So I think PL and NC kind of do that a bit more. They're a little more swap out your favorites or whatever,
right?
Rather than goons
less,
who have like a strict,
less disciplined, I guess.
So I have a question. So of the people that voted with nothing in their, like, empty slots, how many of votes were actually lost to empty slots overall?
Thousands.
There was over
2,000
votes.
about 2,000, right?
Wow.
That's more than that. But there was over 2,000 votes by the last round, and then you had probably another 1,500 to 2,000 that hit exhausted in the last round.
So would it make sense to change this voting process to have a mandatory priority list that you have to fill all 10? So you
No.
the picture.
I don't think that's a good idea.
You don't want people to vote for people they don't want.
That's how you do end up with absolute chaos on a CSM, because you will get real random outliers who just by look at the draw get in.
I'm just gonna put Zenuriya.
You'll get the spot ballot results.
No, you'll find the candidate whose name starts with A will get a lot of votes because they get the donkey vote.
Well, it's sorted in a random order, right? Like when you try to vote, it's always
anyway. Let's get back to the reality of what we just saw, and then we'll wrap up. We've been going for a little while. We've got 10 more minutes. The other takeaway was, besides the increase in voter, mostly from the Imperium, some interesting things that happened. Again, let's explore this. The wormholers are not able to coalesce around one candidate. They had 3, and it looks like they split up pretty well, but eventually the votes seemed to work their way back to, interestingly, Rix Javix, and then eventually ended up going through another wormholer, Mark, into Mike Azariah.
Oh, Mark was eliminated in 12th, right? So they almost got it there. And if Hard Knocks were to play ball, then I'm sure they would get him in.
Was that on Hard Knocks not voting for him?
Well, I don't know how much like voting power Hard Knocks has. I just know that like Hard Knocks and their kind of guys, they don't like that side of the wormhole community, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, we heard
It's
from.
not like the wormhole community can't afford to buy some votes either.
were votes for sale? Does anybody know?
Oh yeah, there were lots for sale.
They're always for sale.
2,000 votes were offered at one point to me.
Did you go for it?
No.
I think you secretly didn't want to win.
What was the price on them?
100 mil maybe? Can't remember.
Yeah, I mean,
Per vote or for 2,000 votes?
100 mil per.
Each, yeah.
So it would have been 200 bill, but that's not actually that expensive when you think about buying an election.
That's cheap.
Free trip to Iceland.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the ballots.
Yeah, Omeka knows a little bit about this.
No, I don't actually. I don't know why people keep saying that. If you look at the ballot,
I'm just throwing shade at you, bro.
I mean, really, I get really annoyed. That's because if you look at the ballot from CSM14, I got enough votes just by like voters voting 10 times or less to even get in. So I don't know what kind of things people say, but I didn't like purchase anything. We had 400 voters by ourselves between Marcia and I, and that's it. Anyway, so when you look at the ballot, when you look at the table on the stream, sometimes it's easy to spot like purchased votes, and that's what you could do for my year as well if you think I bought purchased votes. And it's like, yeah, the kind of lines that you cannot make sense. You know, if you ask whose ballot is this, and then you cannot find the corporation or organization, and it's always in a strict order. For example, line 7 there and
Right.
line 22 maybe, right? So those are the kind of the things. Those are the kind of like votes that might be purchased. It looks like there's not a lot in here. So although 2,000 votes have been offered, maybe not a lot was purchased this year.
Yeah, I think line 22 actually is the Triglavian vote. They had like Maldavius and Brisk for some reason instead of the other guys.
Yeah, that was Strybog.
tell. And then the slot 7 one is actually just a skill farmer. I don't think he sold votes because I think Dr. Spod, you talked to him, right? Or he messaged you or something.
I know how that happened, and I'm not going to talk about it. But no, there was no money involved.
Right.
Yeah, so it was just like a big skill farmer, not like someone who sold. So it's actually kind of surprising. It doesn't look like there's any like high profile vote buying from what I can see. I mean, it might be like a little more hidden, right, where people buy like it in like 20 vote increments or something. But
right.
So from what I'm looking at from the wormhole perspective, I think what needs to happen is the next CSM comes around, they need to gather intelligence on the null block, sort of who's on their ballots, and then work out who is most likely to work with them and get them onto their ballots in the 5th, 6th-ish positions, even if it's Imperium, especially with the Imperium being basically, if it's not aligned to the Imperium, it's completely aligned away from anything nullsec.
If I was a wormholer, I'd follow Rich Richmond's idea this year of just going straight up to Frat and saying, "Can you put me on?" and see what happens.
Yeah, Frat, Legacy, Test, Imperium, and just getting, hey, I'm not for your enemies, I'm not against your enemies, but can you put me in a position that's 6th or so on your ballot?
Yep, and see what happens. They might say yes, they might say no.
But this looks a lot like last year to me. Do you see a big difference, Billy? You were on both.
In terms of voting?
Yeah, and the composition of the CSM. Do you see any major changes here?
No, I think the CSM is probably a little bit weaker. We'll see. I mean, it's stronger in other elements, I guess. It'll be kind of interesting. I was hoping we'd get a little more like technical diversity this year, but it's unfortunate we don't. So
it's very skewed towards certain.
I mean, we have Pappy contributing, to fleet combat. specialists and an industry specialist and an kind of alliance leader level guy with Gobbins, and Sutoni is going to be a good like balance and fitting level specialist. But past that, it's like there's not
no
a ton of
wormhole. There's no new
real broad
content.
knowledge, I guess you could say, unfortunately.
What
Who
kind of
would you have wanted on, if any? If there were, say, 2 more seats, 12 members of the CSM, who would you
Our
have
number
wanted
5
on?
and 6 probably. So I think Phantomite was a good low-sec rep. He wasn't always, much like my arguments with Olmeca, as I'm sure he will attest. We didn't always agree, but that didn't mean he was a bad candidate. He put in the work and he fought for his causes, right?
And who was your number 6?
Arcia.
Yes,
Pochman and Losec, basically, right? Trying to.
Hello.
Oh.
Yeah. Arcia.
Hello.
So close.
I'm the champion of the losers.
No, you got 11th, and you were very competitive.
Yeah, exactly. I was the top.
Being
of
on the
losers.
bubble, the most painful spot.
Right. Nah, it's fine. I can't be angry at it.
I mean, imagine eliminating Mike at the last round.
Yeah, I know.
That's bittersweet, right?
No, I was really surprised that more of Uriel's votes didn't transfer, but he said he had a friend with like a lot of accounts.
765, I'm guessing.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, something like that. And I wasn't on them, so that explains a lot.
Yeah, I think that would have put you in 7th as opposed to 11th. And we were looking at that earlier.
Yeah, well, there's 900 plus Uriel votes there in the top 13 ballots, right? And not a single other one.
I got 900 something first places, and I lasted till the end. I can't be upset.
So we've got to rough up Uriel to give that name up of the guy that didn't transfer votes in your direction. But he did end up with iBeast votes going there, so I guess that went to somebody.
The other thing is it's not uncommon for the 11th place to get slotted into the CSM for different reasons. So
That's true.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Villy, resignation, maybe.
I feel like
No
most
urging.
of the people there are veterans, and it's unlikely. But
Villy will probably
things
agree with
happen.
me.
People have lives. Right?
With that being said, CSM 14, we lost Gillis, so.
Yeah. People have lives. Things happen, right?
Well, Villy,
there's certainly always the possibility somebody gives me a call and I'm on a plane and gone tomorrow. So.
How much shock was there in the Pappy Discord when Norhouse wanted to put me on number 1 of Fraternity Wintercoast ballot?
I think he got a few phone calls. I think that's pretty clear. But what's interesting is the votes were not to Pro God, which I would have thought. They put Kenneth in front in the number 1 spot.
Okay. Kenneth had to go first there because he didn't get enough support from NCPL to get in without having all sorts of other things. By putting him first on the fraternity one, he ensured Kenneth was getting on.
Yeah, I think that tells you they hold on. I think that tells you whoever made those phone calls to Noros wanted to make sure that Kenneth was in higher priority than Pro God.
Kenneth would have gotten on.
It's important to remember we balanced our ticket selections by alliance, right? So we had PL voting Kenneth Pro God, whatever, NC voting Kenneth Pro God. Like we had it all balanced, so everybody had enough first ballot votes to ride, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why there's so many weird Pappy tickets there.
Yeah. So overall, how did you feel the collusion went? I love that word. I think it's super appropriate with Pappy. Did it work out?
Yeah, it worked out quite well. I mean, obviously we were hoping to get a third, but we can't be upset at the result as it is.
That would have been Ron, USMC getting in there.
Yeah, but as I said, like we knew whoever like on the bottom end of the ticket was going to have to get themselves like really, they were going to have to carry themselves 75% of the way there, right? We could push Phantomite or Arcia or Ron or whoever over, but they had to get that first 800 first ballot or first selection votes to begin with, because we had none to really give at that point.
I mean, I got 900 something for selection, didn't get it. So.
I know, right? But hopefully
however
many hundreds of votes got you very close, right?
That was
I was
big number.
Close.
That was
she was 250 short.
But the first round votes, people who prioritized her in first place, was gigantic.
She was 12th in first round votes.
Yeah,
It's actually kind of funny because if you look at the table you've got on the screen right now, none of the ballots, with 90 people voting have RC on them, right? So it's all the small person, small
yeah.
people, small group support that was really carrying that ballot, and it's unfortunate to see
People
it not
from
supported.
a lot of small groups, and I think that I actually got a lot of votes from Isaac.
Yeah, that's
So Arcia's biggest block was 61 just for Arcia.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So you really put that together, like small donors, right? You weren't carried by some industry.
The Arcia Bernie boys.
I was literally Bernie Sanders.
That's awesome. That is awesome. You put it together. There's just
if you can give a little, just give a lot.
My average vote donation size was right.
yeah, exactly, like 60 cents.
Or around the Dell of when.
That is hilarious. Well, I think that that bodes well for your basically your appeal. It's very wide.
Yeah.
Wonder, Rand, this will be a sad number to look at, but how much did Phantomite absorb from the Pappy placings? That
0.
None. So it never got to him. Okay.
It has to be 11th place, or you have to get to the.
To benefit from
final.
it, right.
Yeah, he was knocked out before Villy and Pro got elected, so none of them actually filtered down to him at that point.
Basically, just assume every vote that went to Arcia through the Pappy tickets this time would have went to Phantomite first. Had he been there in the round of 11 instead.
Arcia, your candidacy is my favorite story of this whole thing, because I didn't realize how it was all small votes until just now.
Yeah, people don't they underestimate the small groups, but if you can organize them, it's tough to organize them, but if you can, they're people too, right? Their votes is one vote.
Well, it's also funny to me that you're such a partisan player in your role playing in the team that you pick, Edencom, and also the Minotaur Militia. You're a very partisan player with wide appeal.
I guess because even though like I fight people in games, I don't go on like r/eve and lie about them.
Yeah. Plus, I think you mentioned that when players like role players that play Eve, when they fight, they're actually it's more like they're dancing. They're in it together because the story is what's evolving. The story is what's important, not the bragging rights of who won.
I mean, it's good to win. You feel good when you win. But like if you lose, and it's fine. And if you lose a game, you shouldn't be mad at the person you lost to. You just need to be mad at yourself for not doing better.
You're right. Well, very interesting run. Arcia almost there at 11th. That's much better than Matterall candidacy, for example. And Suetonia got on, which is great. We did not see your support, Suetonia, in the same way that people made us aware of it, right, Ren? That's what you were saying earlier.
Yeah, so I got reached out to by a lot of people saying, I couldn't see any obvious support for Suetonia as first-person ballots. As Villy says, first-person ballots are very important. I couldn't see any obvious support for it. But when we did our show midweek last week, I had a lot of people reach out going, no, Suetonia has a lot of first-person ballots, and it has proven to be true.
Yeah, I definitely didn't think Suetonia's support at the first ballot was at the strong as it showed up. But obviously, a combination of Volta and the wormhole tickets really played a big part in it. That's good, because I think Suetonia is a value-added guy.
The leader of Volta actually picked exactly how many votes Suetonia was going to get in the first round, to within 20.
Yeah, I thought I would get like around 1,000, and it seems that was about right.
That was just enough, wasn't it?
Star Commander, I think his name was. He said you're going to get about 10,050.
Well, 1,050 probably.
Yeah, I
sorry,
got 1,050 exactly at the start. I mean, it wasn't actually as good as I did in CSM 12 and CSM 13. I actually had the third most votes in CSM 12. I had like 1.8k to begin with, and then I think in CSM 13 I had like 1.4k. So it's not as high as it was, but it was good enough, I guess, with all of the transfers that kept coming in.
That's incredible that it must also be small donor kind of votes. Considering there's no, you don't have a massive constituency that we know of, unless you have a strong viewer base, but not all streamers do.
So his biggest voting block was 107, which was We Form Volta's ticket. But again, there's only 5 candidates in that ticket, so I think you'll find if we go further down, a lot of people would have put a 6th, 7th, 8th candidate and wouldn't have filtered together, counted together.
Yeah, but I think Suetonia remained competitive for a long time.
I mean, I was always pretty high up, and then as soon as Phantomite got eliminated, and then Sea-Doo got eliminated, I inherited all of the Dread Bomb and Wrecking Crew votes.
Oh, okay, that's
and
good.
that's really that's when I really pushed up to the front, because the Wrecking Crew ballot was about, like, if you look at them, it's about 200 if you look at the 2 biggest ones, and I was ranked 4th on their ballots. I was ranked 3rd on Dread Bombs 1 and 4th on the Wrecking Crew 1. And when Phantomite and Sea-Doo got eliminated, that's when the transfers happened.
Well, congratulations again, Arcia. Good run. Villy, congratulations. Spod and Rich, good job. Teddy was here earlier. Good job with him too. Everybody placed really well.
I could have been better.
You did great.
I was just popping in to say hi. Congratulations to those who won, Suetonia, Villy. Everybody else, have a good one.
Thanks, Arcia. All right, and thanks, Ren, for putting all this together for us and showing us around some of the numbers. And Spod too, thanks for helping with that calculations.
Don't forget to thank Suetonia for making the spreadsheet.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it was Suetonia's spreadsheet we were looking at. Thanks for doing that and color coding it as well. Appreciate that. So congratulations to everybody who won this year at CSM. You're welcome to Talking In Station's color and designation at the beginning of your name. We will be seeing you around, but that's all that we have time for today. Oh, Brisk just came in. Brisk, congratulations. You want to have a few comments before we go? We were just about to wrap up.
I just wanted to say thanks. Everybody was asking for me to come on. I thought I'd just come on and say hi. Thanks again for everybody that voted. I love the fact that turnout was so high this year. That's great. I definitely want to thank my initiative guys, because I've never seen us turn out the vote like that before. It was pretty amazing to me, the numbers we had. So thanks to all my Init brothers and sisters for that. That was great. And I look forward to working with Villy and Suetonia and all the guys again for the next year.
All right. Congratulations, guys. And stay tuned later on today. We'll have a little bit of a wrap up for CSM and more news of the week all throughout the week here at Talking In Stations. Thanks for hanging out with us. You can jump into our Discord and hang out with us even more after this broadcast. Also, one last thing, CCP did a great job under ugly circumstances of a leak that came out, kind of gave away the story, but they still put on a great show. It's fun to watch, even with the end already known. So appreciate it. Swift and Dopamine from the community team, guys, did a great job throughout this whole thing. Also, one last thing, great job to the interviewers that interviewed CSM candidates to expose them to people so that people could learn about the candidates, especially Ashtarothi, who did a ton of interviews one-on-one, spent many hours giving people a platform in order to reach an audience. Thanks very much, everyone. We'll see you next time on Talking In Stations.